Welcome back everyone to theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, host. We are here at our New York Stock Exchange CUBE studio as part of the NYSE Wired program. Got a great guest here who's going to go into all the ins and outs of the infrastructure, physical side of it that's enabling all the generative AI and all the demand for the horsepower as everyone's talking about it. And by the way, I will say crypto as well. I mean, data, Bitcoin mining and crypto takes a lot of energy too, of course. This is the scarce resource that everyone's looking for right now. Tom Traugott is here, SVP of Emerging Technology at EdgeCore Digital Infrastructure. He's in the real estate business, he's in the data center business, you guys are in the technology business. Boy, the world has changed over the past couple decades, and most recently, the past 10. Past 5 and the past 3 have been out of control growth.
It has.
Welcome to theCUBE.
Thank you. Excited to be here, and frankly, I'm a New Yorker, as I was mentioning. I've never been on the floor before, but I've been to the New York Stock Exchange data center in Mahwah. So I've been under the hood, but not here before.
You were helping those guys with the high frequency trading,
That's
get
right.
that fiber edge, that every packet, speed of light, you can squeeze out of the transit.
And then they got smart and they stopped the cheating. Everyone had the coiled fiber of equivalent sizing and distance. Yeah. So I've been in and around the data center business for over 20 years here, started in New York, and really in the 2000s, the largest data center market in the world was Northern New Jersey. Yeah. And that baton got passed to Northern Virginia, and that's never shifted. EdgeCore Digital Infrastructure was founded in 2018, and we're arguably on kind of a version 2 of the business. Yeah. I joined from almost 5 years at AWS on the infrastructure side, getting to see worked on a new regions team, got to see how the cloud was being made, in the sort of early days of every country gets a cloud. Yeah. And that's, I think in a lot of ways, EdgeCore's focus was to be a platform, to be thinking about the scale that the historical cloud computing, that big 3 plus, would require, and be a provider to them in core markets. And then we work our ways through COVID and supply chain constraints, and in 2022 ran a process recognizing that we had invested with the original investors, invested in large tracts of land, entitlements, and power. What our customers wanted was product and scale, particularly in the face of AI, which was a twinkle in the eye, as we were talking to our now financial sponsor, Partners Group. So they bought us in early November 2022, and a couple of weeks later, ChatGPT launches, and everything, all the rumors of AI's takeover become, front and center.
Interesting, over the years I've had a chance to interview James Hamilton, and just recently I was up in Seattle in June with AWS, with Prasad, who oversees all their deployments globally. And he talked about global scale, because it's Amazon, of course, they got global scale. Yeah. But what I found fascinating, I also talked to one of his direct reports in the DC Summit. What I found fascinating is it's transitioned to a full design, systems design, facilities play.
Yes.
This isn't like the old days of hosting. Hey, I got a building, I got some power. Okay, let's get some racks, let's sell the cages. I mean, most people think of like cages, of course there's cages and racks, but they squeeze everything they can out of it because of the bounded by power issue. Everything's bounded by power.
Bounded by power,
and so that is a huge constraint they got to engineer around.
Yes.
How has that changed the business landscape, and how are you guys working with that? Because this is, everyone's talking about the same thing.
Yeah, so we made a pivot in this post-ChatGPT era of really focusing on single-tenant buildings and campuses. And for instance, we had our flagship campus is in Phoenix, Mesa, Arizona, and what was going to be a 6-building, 20 to 30 megawatt per building campus, we remaster planned to 3. And the first building was the smallest, and it's now, basically 2 buildings with almost 100 megawatts each. In light of, we really reoriented around the needs of AI. And what's been useful has been, I came into the business as a real estate guy that's become a technologist over the years, but I have learned about semiconductors and chips, more in the last.
You had to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't have a happy customer, because they're engineering to the chip level.
Exactly, and we're still digesting that. We want to ultimately know how many megawatts or gigawatts that cluster needs, but what seems to be really different today, there's a scale up and scale out dynamic that's happening at the same time. So
there's a race to the AGI, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're seeing all kinds of deals, the Texas deals, Silicon Sands, they call it in the Phoenix area. Everyone's building fabs, more data centers are everywhere. I mean, this is a complete changeover.
Yeah.
Can you scope the order of magnitude of the demand curve?
Sure, yeah.
Is this crazy?
I think a useful way of looking at it, so looking at the recent earnings, so just did a roll-up of, you have almost $800 billion of, whether they call it, booked revenue or remaining performance obligations across the hyperscalers plus, traditional hyperscalers plus CoreWeave. And assuming that's a couple of years of annualized revenue, they don't say, but that easily is 15 to 25 gigawatts of capacity when you kind of strip out the hardware, which is going to be, that'll be 50 to 60% of the spend. The data center infrastructure would be required to support all those booked deals. There's a shortfall, and I think that's been a pretty consistent commentary. Seems to be, we'd be earning more if we had more capacity, but then specifically, I think where we hone in and our lens is focused on is NVIDIA, and NVIDIA's, march to
the gigawatt data center.
Blowing past 4 trillion to a next.
Well, their vision is a gigawatt rack, basically.
That's right. You're right.
They want the gigawatt rack.
They want the gigawatt.
This brings in the economics, and I know NVIDIA's going to make some big announcements this next week at Hot Chips in Stanford, the big event going on for insiders. They're doing more to squeeze more performance out of their gear, which speaks to what you're getting at, which is the AI economics are now kicking in.
Yes.
So there's all kinds of new levers, or are there? I mean, that's my question. What are the economic levers? Because they're going to keep grinding, make the algorithms better.
What NVIDIA has been supremely good at is staying laser focused on selling chips, right? And as many as possible. And I think what we've, and it seems to be
at some point you can't stack up the GPUs and the systems without the power.
Oh, that's
absolutely. Like a non-starter.
Yeah, and they need folks to buy the GPUs and then place them. But if you don't have the energy, data centers without power are warehouses or empty shells.
Yeah.
So I think what NVIDIA has really pushed in, really over the last, with the current generation with Blackwell and beyond, we're seeing that. You asked what's different about data centers. Well, the campuses are bigger than they've ever been. Yeah. And they're also the densification. I'd say a lot of hyperscale market was pretty resistant to direct-to-chip liquid cooling for many years, right? You've got gigawatt fleets, you don't want to retrofit them. But NVIDIA, with their market share, effectively said, if you want to continue with our roadmap, to DLC, direct-to-chip liquid cooling is the way. So we've, among others, made all of our index around that for all of our campuses, and that data center providers kind of need to get the big things right. Mm-hmm. We need large blocks of power, so scale, supporting the scale out, but also increasingly large blocks of fluid, right, to be able to run through that capacity, and then each each customer has a slightly different way. So we try and build to 80 to 90% of the market and customize.
Power and cooling has always been talked about, but now it's front and center. I got to ask you about some of these other new clouds, because they have to build out too. So you have many customers.
Yes.
You have the clouds, AWS, Azure, OpenAI, they got huge demand. But then you got CoreWeave, we'll be talking tonight to Vulture.
Yes.
You know, they're building out these neoclouds.
Yes. I think there's we internally work through, there's this question on the long term. Is there a right to exist, a right to win, vis-a-vis the hyperscalers? And frankly, what we've seen is in some ways a nimbleness and starting, you know, without the additional SKUs and the additional services that still need to be, you know, cared for, that may be on traditional x86 architectures. They're able to sometimes more nimbly go after, deliver capacity to the underlying frontier models in a simpler manner. You know, going back to my Amazon days, there's a demand side, there's a revenue forecast that's, you know, the architected, you talk to Gartner, you talk to IDC, and you build a forecast and then you solve for it. The simplicity of the AI model is sometimes identify capacity, turn around, ask OpenAI, would you, if I build it, would you buy it? They say yes, and they do the deal. And that shortcutting of the process, I think, is leading to, you know, has led to some really big wins that are you know, now public.
All right, so what's on your agenda this year as the market continues to evolve and change too? There's new technologies coming out, new ways to air cool. I've heard some cool things there. But at the end of the day, this is economics, you got to make money.
Yes.
What's on your plan? What's on your agenda for the second half of the year, and what's the forecast in your mind for 26?
Yeah, so we've, as I mentioned, you know, our new partners group, you know, really saw, aligned with the vision that we needed to make the most out of the campuses we had. So we've been building, and you know, we have capacity delivering. Well, we have leases that were, you know, booked a couple of years ago that we're delivering as we speak, and will continue to deliver on. We've got.
But you guys are looking for more space. It's like, correct, you got to get space to do. It's recruiting.
We need to stay, you know, 4 to 5 years ahead of pipeline at any given time. So we've had some big announcements. Louisa County is a 700-acre, you know, property, and we're doing everything we can to bring that 1.2 gigawatts forward.
You guys are creating the future.
Possible.
You guys are creating the infrastructure for the future.
Yeah.
I got to ask about EdgeCore. First of all, I love the name. It's got edge in it, and it's before core. Core is core to edge, but edge to core. But it speaks to another trend. I just want to get your reaction. I'm not sure if you're in this business or not, or see it. The whole edge, you know, regional, these areas used to be base stations and telecom. I'm seeing Amazon go into satellite. They're going into more like local and regional, not data centers, but like almost substation type data center model. I use the word substation as a kind of an old term, but like sub data center, ways to kind of disaggregate maybe power.
I think that, you know, speaking with some folks that are playing in the space, particularly at the AI level, so we generally play on the large cluster side of things. Now, because we're located in close proximity to metro, say that we're fungible.
You could be a hub and spoke.
We can be a training environment, and as that, you know, the latest and greatest gear becomes last year's model, that becomes repurposed as inference, and we're close enough to key population centers that I think that's a big part of our strategy.
You'll flex the facility to whatever the resource is being powered by.
And with scale. So we're trying to meet multi-purpose. What is interesting too, though, and there's a couple of folks I've talked to, and NVIDIA I think is pushing for this. There is also this commoditization of GPUs, so to make GPUs available anywhere, and like a DGX Lepton. So, providing on-demand spot capacity. It's not large clusters. You can't really manage it that way, but you want to, 10 GPUs, 100 GPUs on demand. From what I've gathered, GPUs, there's the possibility that they may be able to operate in a decentralized manner, maybe a little more easily than cloud historically.
Yeah.
Cloud's got a lot of hypervisor, a lot of management layers, but if you're an edge facility and you've got power and sufficient cooling, you may be able to support your own little cluster of GPUs.
Well, Tom, keep in touch. I'm really glad you came in.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Keep doing what you got to do. Get more power.
Get more power.
It's like Star Trek. Scotty, more power. There's the old school Star Trek reference there. But this is the key. It's not going away. It's going to be a whole other ball game.
It is, yeah. And one of these days, who knows? Our industry kind of, a lot of take privates over the last 5 years because of all the development, but we'll see if there's some more bell ringing.
There's definitely demand.
Years. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, power is the key. Cooling is the key. Gen AI needs the horsepower, so does crypto. We are going to look at a whole nother revolution and evolution in how infrastructure is going to be provisioned and scaled up, of course, global scales with digital culture. And we're seeing it now with stable coins, digital twins. Our lives are digital and physical coming together, physical AI, as NVIDIA calls it. I'm John Furrier, your host. Thanks for watching.
A great thing.